I'm here in the city of Lahore, standing right in front of Lahore Fort, a 500 years old building built by the Mughals, a fine depiction of their grandeur and architectural genius. The Mughals ruled Hindustan for 3 centuries, an era of peace and prosperity. Lahore is a city filled with magnificent Mughal buildings, and rightly so, as this city played the foundational role for the Mughal Empire. Lahore was the key which opened up the splendor of the Mughal era, and the rest is history. Let me tell you how it all started. It's the story of Zaheer Babur, the first Mughal emperor ever to step here. On the 14th of February 1483, Babur was born in Farghana, a small state in Central Asia, presently in Uzbekistan. He was a descendant of the Turkish conqueror Timur and Mongol conqueror Genghis Khan. Timur was a great Turk warrior who ruled Central Asia, and his capital was Samarkand, while Genghis Khan was a ferocious warrior who ruled over the world. From the lineage of these two great warriors, Babur rose. He was the 5th in male succession from Timur and the 13th through the female line from Genghis Khan. Umar Sheikh Mirza, Babur's father, ruled the small principality of Farghana to the north of the Hindu Kush mountain range. Babur's father died when he was just 12 years of age. He was young yet energetic, surrounded with many enemies within and without. Samarkand was the capital of Timur dynasty, and so Babur, as of his ancestors, thought it was his birthright to claim Samarkand. For 10 years, from 1494 to 1504, Babur sought to recover Samarkand, and twice occupied it briefly in 1497 and 1501. He fought many wars and eventually gained control of Samarkand. But events took a drastic turn when the king of Farghana and now of Samarkand, Babur, was faced with a rebellion in Farghana. He went back there but was unsuccessful. In the meantime, the enemy took control of Samarkand, making Babur a king with no land. After living like a nomad, he finally made Kabul his home and took it under his control in 1504. Let's stop here and I'll tell you another part of the story. Thousands of miles away, something else was going on. Events of minor importance which changed the entire course of history. Tatar Khan, the governor of Punjab, was asserting independence from the Lodhi dynasty under Behlol Lodhi, who failed and lost his life. His son, Daulat Khan, became the next Nizam and took oath of loyalty to the throne in Delhi. He played a key role in the story of Babur. Now let's get back to Babur. Years passed and Babur became a fine young man with great personality. He was so strong that he could run over a high wall by holding a tall young man in both arms. Was such an expert swimmer who could swim across any river that came in his way. As a rider on horseback, he could ride for hundreds of miles continuously.
In January 1515, Babur made his first visit to Hindustan. His journey started again when Lodhi dynasty in Hindustan was in trouble. There were rifts in the front rows of the ruling elite. Therefore, Babur was called upon by some of the foes of Ibrahim Lodhi, who was the emperor of Hindustan at that time. Delhi Sultanate under the reign of Ibrahim Lodi was ripe for overthrow.
You see, the qualities that were needed to succeed in that era were the abilities to inspire loyalty and devotion. Babur had them in abundance, and Lodi was no match for him in this regard. He went on their call as Hindustan was also under Taimur's dynasty in the past. Babur tried 4 times but failed. The 5th time, however, he was invited by the governor of Punjab. Yes, you are right. Daulat Khan, who had alliance with Babur, and together they attacked Delhi. In 1526, Babur's 15,000 soldiers attacked the estimated 100,000 cavalry and 1,000 elephants of the Lodhi rulers at Panipat, a broad, rather flat region near Delhi, where Babur's army won a decisive victory for the Mughal Empire.
Babur met Ibrahim at Panipat, some 80 kilometers north of Delhi. Babur's army was insignificant in numbers against Ibrahim's forces, but Babur was equipped with guns, cannons, artillery, war tactics that the Lodhis lacked. Babur defeated Ibrahim and ended Lodhi dynasty in India.
Babur is credited with introducing cannons in warfare when he invaded Hindustan. He introduced the use of gunpowder in the subcontinent. For him, the soldier's art was just as important as the poet's. Ibrahim Lodi lost not only the battle, but his life and Hindustan. Babur won the battle, conquered Delhi, and laid the foundations of Mughal Empire in Hindustan. The first order of business that he took care of as an emperor of Hindustan was laying out a garden named Aram Bagh on Jamna River. This act alone reflects his idea of governance.
This is something which is strange in one sense, that only these 15,000 who came and they were able to establish, and this is a new development which never happened before historically in the world today, that you cannot actually deal with it, and yet they were able to, a new empire was set up. Now this is something which is strange, and this is contribution, and despite all writers do write about it and talk about negatively also and criticize him for many reasons, but still the fact remains that after all it is a minority and a small number came, established an empire in due course of time.
Islam is both history and geography. When Babur came to Hindustan, he was a Muslim descendant of Turks and Mongols. All of this washed away in the shores of history, but only his Muslim identity survived the test of time. He was expression of Muslim power in Hindustan. He replaced the fragmented political structure with a new, better institution which kept on for centuries.
Mughal emperors had their official seals. Babur's seal had a distinctive circle which showed his name, and the outer circles had his ancestors' names till Taimur. This seal was a potent symbol of Babur's authority and the legitimacy of his ancestral legacy. Babur's advent in Hindustan influenced the economy. Changes took place in the economic sector, particularly trade flourished in 2 regions. It strengthened contacts between South, Central, and West Asia. A large number of businessmen, tourists, and Sufis traveled to Hindustan from Marv, Bukhara, Samarkand, Tashkent, Balkh, Herat, Khurasan, Persia, and Europe. The Mughals strengthened and facilitated commercial relations with the outside world. The exchange of customs, ideas, traditions, and values took place. Towns and cities flourished due to increased economic activities. Urbanization increased. The Mughal Empire that he founded was later on developed, and it created a prosperous Hindustan due to its principles of justice, freedom, and tolerance. Hindustan became the golden sparrow under the Mughal reign. In 1730, when Mughals were ruling the country, Hindustan had a 24.4% world's GDP share, higher than that of the entire Europe, which was 23.3%.
Basically, the Mughals were people of high culture who brought with them the mastery of arts of both peace and war. It is for this reason that the Mughals were not only great warriors but also poets, writers, painters, and artists of their era. Babur was the perfect blend of Ahle Qalam and Ahle Saif. That is a perfect blend of pen and sword.
Babur appears before us in the diverse roles of a ruler, warrior, sportsman, craftsman, author, and a devoted student of nature. And as we turn the pages of the priceless memoir, we realize that we are in the presence of one of the most civilized and attractive personalities that have ever graced an Asiatic throne. The color of an autumn leaf, the hue of a tulip, the scent of a melon are sufficient to arouse his admiration and emotion, while his love of flowers and eye-captivating sights led to his passion for gardens and breathtaking architectural designs, which are till date the greatest contribution of the Mughals to Hindustani art.
Well, we see that when the Mughal rule came to the Indian subcontinent, it brought with it lots of changes, lots of fascinating changes. Now, very obvious ones are the way they gave new administrative structures to this part of the world, and of course everybody knows that later on this part of the world became a very prosperous managed area. Apart from that, the linguistic diversity that they brought with them and the languages that they had used, like Arabic and Persian and Turkic. Now, all those languages, I would say, amalgamated the languages which were spoken here, in particular the Hindui language which was spoken over here. And this sort of marriage, I would say, brought into shape the Urdu that we now use. So that this language of Urdu that we now use has words from all these languages, and this diversity has given Urdu the potential to be used as a link language, and it is understood and spoken not just in Pakistan and India but other parts of the world as well. I think that this is so because the diversity which became the DNA of Urdu language, it basically happened due to the advent of the Mughals in this part of the world.
Babur was an expert of Turkic and Persian languages. His autobiography, Tuzk-e-Babri, is a masterpiece of its genre. He was an accomplished poet in Persian, and his book, Philosophy of Law, in Arabic is a proof of his competence. Babur was an accomplished calligrapher and introduced a new style of script called Khat-e-Babri in which the letters were written separately and enjoined.
Zaheer Muhammad Babur was not just first Mughal king, but one of the greatest empire builders. History as a branch of human knowledge was developed by the Muslims. Writing history was a common tradition in Muslim, but writing royal biographies was not that much common during that period. Babur set this tradition, and Baburnama is one of the finest Chattai Turkic language.
Zaheeruddin Babur is mostly known as a great warrior, but apart from that, he was a great builder. He built many buildings like palaces, walls, wells, and tanks, and other things. But he was mostly known as a great builder of gardens. He introduced Central Asian style of gardening with flowing waters, flowers, and trees.
Gardens of the Mughal era in their designs had purposive and symbolic meanings. They represented a visual metaphor for Babur's ability to control and order the arid Indian plains and ultimately its population. He not only improved military technology but also tried to bring changes in the mechanism of agricultural production. For instance, Babur introduced new crops in Hindustan and encouraged the use of improved water lifting devices for the purpose of irrigation. Some of the remaining mosques of his time include Jamia Mosque Sambhal, Kabuli Bagh Mosque, and the Babri Mosque Ayodhya. They were all constructed on Timurid style of Chahar Tag, having 4 barrel vaults and a dome. Food is another major source of depicting the traditional resemblance. For instance, the traditional bread in Uzbekistan is called naan or tandeer, whereas in Pakistan the same bread is commonly known as naan or roti, while tandoor is the baking oven and venue where such breads are made and sold. Likewise, kebab and the traditional pulao in Pakistan is also an import of Uzbek food culture. The kulcha and samosa are the commonly shared cuisine of both the countries. The common arts and handicrafts are another vital aspect of cultural intermingling and harmony. In Uzbekistan, miniature paintings are used to depict stories, and this trend is also being imported in Pakistan. Wood carvings are common, including keychains, doors, and pillars. In both the countries, many traditions are depicted through textiles. Curtains, cloth, and carpets are made traditionally by weaving and dyeing. Babur died at the age of 48, and his early death is often seen as a sacrifice for his son Humayun. Humayun, when 11 years of age, became critically ill. Babur, a desperate father, asked God that if someone could die for his son, then let it be him. History tells us that Babur started circling Humayun's bed, asking for his son's health while offering his own self to be sacrificed. Humayun got better and Babur died within a year. As per Babur's will, he was buried in Kabul, Afghanistan. All his life, Babur longed for his homeland. Hindustanis rated mango as the king of fruit, but Babur, on the other hand, had a different notion. His descendants, however, quickly took to the subcontinent and, of course, the mango. Babur's grandson Akbar planted a Lak Bagh, a mango orchard containing 1 lakh trees in Bihar. Babur is a bright and proud chapter of our history which will keep on inspiring generations. Mughal architecture represented aesthetics of highest quality. Taj Mahal is arguably the most admired building of the past 4 centuries.